Guys, I am so excited for you to meet Julie Solomon. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me, Candy. I'm so glad we're finally getting to do this. And we've got so many mutual friends and connections. So it feels just like a natural synergy that this is happening.
I was so happy when it finally worked out because I've been in your neck of the woods. You were going to come and speak at one of my events. And so I was like, let's just do a podcast so that we can finally see each other face to face. So I'm so excited that we're doing this because I know there is so much value that you're going to be able to provide the audience because you've been in this space for a long time. There's a lot of people that are newer to the space, newer in their industry, and they're talking about things that maybe they don't have a lot of depth of experience in, right? They're just getting their experience. I always love conversations with people that have been in a specific industry or field for a really long time. And so I love that about you. And I love your book, Get What You Want. And I feel like that is something as women specifically, I know men struggle with this too, but I feel like women specifically, we often think, can we really have what we want? Is what we want okay to want, right? Like I know I struggle with that in my life. And how do we get that? Can you speak a little bit to that?
Yeah. I think it's funny because a lot of people will say, well, I can't get what I want because, it's not possible, or maybe I don't know what I want, or I think that what I want is too big or what have you. But I always think that the first step is really knowing what you want. And the way that you get clear on knowing what you want is by getting clear on knowing what you don't want. And I think that knowing what you don't want is the fastest way to redirect you to what it is that you do want. So I think that's the first piece, if you will. And then really more of a deeper mindset thing, I think it's that belief of possibility. A lot of people, they're afraid to admit what they want because, what if I'm judged for this? Or what if people, think something? Or what if I don't get it? What does that say about me? What does that mean about me? And so I think that really coming to terms and getting really comfortable with your self-concept of what is possible for you is a big piece to that.
I love that. And I love that too. Like, know what you don't want. And sometimes the only way you're going to know that is by tasting a bunch of different things. Like I'll just transparently, in the last 18 months, we were just talking off camera. I have a book. I started this group. I was doing like one-on-one stuff. I was doing business advisory, and I wore myself out to the bone, like to the fact that like I exited these companies, created all this wealth, tons of investments. I was starting to hate my life. And I was like, whoa, what is this feeling? What does this say about me? And there was I worked through this like judgment that I was judging myself for feeling this way. Is there something that if anyone listening right now has felt that in other aspects of their life, that you can kind of acknowledge that, understand it, not judge it, and how to move on from it?
Yeah, I think it's, taking something, especially like a self-judgment, you could take it critically, but not necessarily personally. And so I would look at that self-judgment. I mean, yes, it's important to go easy on yourself, but also where is this redirecting me to? Because if I'm being critical or judging myself for this feeling, there's some kind of contrast or resistance here. I need to get to the root of why that is. Why does this feel heavy? Why does this feel clunky? Why am I resisting this? And can that help me kind of shift to a different direction that I need to be going on? So that's really how I look at any time that I am being self-judging or critical. Am I being hard on myself because I want to play the victim and feel bad about myself? Or am I being hard on myself because I'm really sick and tired of this and I want something different?
Yeah. And then I guess it's, how do you know, right? Like if you know what you don't want, is there any insight that you can give people on how to figure out what it is you truly do want?
I think the first step to getting clear on what it is that you do want, once you know what it is that you don't want, is really this concept of, wouldn't it be nice if? And I love this idea of like, well, wouldn't it be nice if I had a beach house? Wouldn't it be nice if, I was able to work 4 days a week and, I made money through these varying revenue streams? Wouldn't it be nice if, because it keeps it a little kind of fairy tale like and ethereal, but it's also allowing you to see what really your deep desires are without judgment, because just wouldn't it be nice, without being critical. And so to me, I love that idea of wouldn't it be nice? and kind of playing with that. And then really getting to the root of why, why do I want this? Why do I want a beach house? Well, it may be a great investment property. It's great equity. It's something that I could pass on to my kids, yada, yada, yada. But is there a deeper why behind that? When I think about the beach house, do I think about the memories that we're going to be creating with our children? Do I think about, maybe one day having grandchildren and seeing them running around? Like, can I attach a deeper meaning and a deeper why to this that may be more legacy driven or even just greater than myself? Mm-hmm. And I think that when we can get to that place, it anchors it to a meaning that I think is necessary, because what ends up happening when we start going towards the thing that it is that we want, we have all of these things called excuses that come in the way. And I believe that your why for getting what you want or for wanting what you want in the first place has to be greater than any excuse that you're going to create or that will come your way of why you can't make that happen.
That's so good. And so it's like, if everyone just did this after this interview, take 2 hours and just go sit somewhere and think about, wouldn't it be nice? And just let all of that come out and probably just journal it. But I feel what people do is then they're like, well, how can I get that? But that seems so big, like I'm renting a house right now. How can I have this big, beautiful beach house? And they get stuck in the how. Is there anything that you can share about how not to get stuck in the how?
Yeah. Well, instead of asking the question of how, instead ask yourself the question, what will it take? What would it take? Instead of, well, how can I do that? It's, well, what would it take to get a beach house? Like really, let's think about it. Okay. Do I first know where I want to? And I'm just using this beach house as an example because I started with it. Do I know where I want this beach house? Do I know how much it costs? Do I know how much I can put down? Do I know what the note's going to be if I'm going to have a mortgage? Do I know what those monthly payments are going to be? Like, can I get to the brass tacks of this and then start to reverse engineer it? And that's the thing that, Candy, I don't know if you see it, but that's the stuff that people don't do. Mm-hmm. They have these ideas of all this thing, all this stuff that they want in life, but they just keep it up here in this like ethereal fantasy place instead of taking it from fantasy to actual action. So what are the steps that I can start taking today to actually build this out and to see if this is possible and if I can make this happen? And of course I can make it happen. It's just a matter of when and what needs to happen in order to put the plan in place. And so I think that it's about taking the bigger idea and breaking it down into smaller bite-sized pieces that make it more consumable and tangible for you, no matter what it is.
I love that. And it's so common. People have these big ideas and they think that the idea is the big part, but really what it is, it's the action that you take to get there, the execution. And it's really not as hard as we think. But when emotion gets into play, when we get our feelings involved that aren't facts, then typically that's what trips people up from taking those steps forward. I see it all the time. It's like, oh, well, I'm not capable of doing this, or they have some story that they're bringing in that doesn't even apply anymore, but it was 20 years old or whatever, right? Like, this isn't for me. Meanwhile, there are people all over the world in every country that have beach houses. Like, it is not that hard, guys. Let's just figure out how we need to reverse engineer this. And that could be anything, right? We're just using that as an example. But I love that because it's like, what's the next action, right? What is just the next step to take? And I think too, oftentimes you mentioned this about like, maybe people are like, what are people going to think? Or is it okay for me to want that? And I think too, I see a lot of people pleasers, and even more so on the online space. When I kind of came out from behind the scenes of building companies, and then now I'm like in this personal brand space, oh my gosh, the amount of like people pleasing and nobody wants to say anything. It's almost like toxic positivity where nobody wants to hold anybody accountable for anything. Is there a way that you can identify that and maybe stop being a people pleaser or have some boundaries around yourself so that you can go out and achieve these things without pissing everybody off?
Yeah. I mean, I think the first thing is just to realize that in order to be successful, sometimes you're going to disappoint some people, and that's okay. And so I think it's about really getting to the root of, can I be okay if everyone doesn't like me? And if you can't, well, then maybe you still need to do a little bit of work on that. But if you can say, you know what, I think I'm still going to get up and I think I'm going to survive and I'm still going to be breathing air and I'm still going to be, able to move and take care of myself and move forward. If there's people out there that don't like me, well, then it lets yourself off the hook a little bit. And so I think that's the first thing, is just really getting clear on like, why do you need everybody to like you? Like, where does this disease to please come from? And like, what is the ultimate outcome at the end of the day? As someone who used to be a massive people pleaser, I think the more that I rooted into my own confidence, my own direction on what I wanted my life to be and look and feel like, and when I really started living my life on reality's terms and not the terms of other people or other ideas, is when I was able to start to shed that a little bit. And I think that really came with just starting to acceptance, starting to accept other people, other places, other things, other situations as they are, and not as I wished them to be. Because I really think people pleasing is just another form of control. It's your way of trying to control a person or a situation by, oh, I'm going to act like this or say this or not say this so you'll like me. And so really, when you get to that root of like, well, where is this desire, this need to control coming from? You can, again, start to reverse engineer that and really get to the root of that. But I think that the acceptance piece to that and really being aware of when it starts up is the key with that, at least from my own experience.
Yeah, I love that. And I think the world that we're in right now doesn't help having those boundaries up, right? It's attracting followers and getting likes and engagement. And then you have, so many people that I believe with good intentions saying like your net worth is your network. So then everyone's just trying to network in communities and build these relationships and be friends with people that they're not really friends with, right? So it becomes all this surface level stuff. And I think, is there something that, I don't know if you've seen that, it's okay if you disagree, but I would love to know if you feel that. And if so, how can you still grant people grace, wish them well, but not necessarily have a relationship with every single person that you meet?
Yeah. I mean, that whole thing of like networking for need. I mean, first off, you can smell it from a mile away. It's so disingenuous. It comes from a place of scarcity and it's sleazy and it's slimy. And it's a form of sales that really never works. And so when you can come from networking from a true, authentic service-based place of, hi, I genuinely want to build a relationship with you, not, hey, what can I get out of this? Then that is going to always set you up for more success. And I think on the flip side of that, of how do you cultivate and create boundaries to where you're not just so available and accessible to everyone who may want to network with you, is just, again, getting really clear on your values when it comes to the people and relationships that you want to have in your life. Really being clear on that people pleasing piece of, I think that the space that we're in with networking and people pleasing is that it takes away this idea of critical thinking that I think we all need in order to grow and succeed and really just live in society. And if we can't think critically, if we can't reason things out, then it just kind of downplays everything and makes it all very similar and makes it vanilla. And at the end of the day, nobody follows vanilla. Nobody follows followers. They follow leaders. They follow people that can think critically, that do have something to say, that do put boundaries up, that aren't just open and available and not only just share themselves, but share their world with everybody. I think that there has to be a little bit of structure and mystique and mystery to anyone, whether that's networking, to build relationships or whether that's building a personal brand. And I feel like that idea of networking and people pleasing and trying to gain followers and all of that can kind of meld into something really unauthentic if you don't watch it.
Oh my gosh. And you said inauthentic. It's so funny how everyone's preaching to be authentic, but there's so much inauthenticity in the process. Like I see so many people preaching about building community, but really they're building a community to sell to that community. Right. And I'm like, how is nobody else seeing that? That's why everyone's telling you to build a community. It's so that you can pour in. And then the second you have to sell or market something, now you have a built-in community to buy it from you. And it's so strange that the rest of the world doesn't operate like that. So I feel like I kind of came into this space and I'm like, am I crazy? Am I the only one? Am I negative? Right? Like there's all of this judgment. Like, why doesn't anyone else see that they want you to become part of their network, their community, so that then they can sell you their next thing that they have? Is there something that maybe we can help people that if they're like, wait a minute, I think I understand what she's talking about, that we can help them be free of that to be able to, for them to understand that they can still have the life they want without participating in some of these things that I think society tells us we need to be successful.
Yeah. From my own experience, a lot of that has been trial and error, especially when I was younger and when I started in the online space 10 years ago in 2013. And I would get very lost in the glossy glamour of, the influencer space and experts and these, big people with these big names that, were kind of, for lack of a better word, selling me into things, whether that was offers, ideas. And I think the first step, though, is just to, at the end of the day, no matter what industry you're in, like we're all selling something, like we're all in sales. And I think that if you can start to embrace that in a really beautiful relationship-based, service-based way, it can be a really powerful and beautiful thing. It can be something that is used to transform lives, to impact people, to spread really positive messages. But then there's the counter side to that, there's a really dark, sleazy, slimy side. And so I think that, again, the more that someone roots into their own confidence, their own courage and what it is that they want to do, and they really start paving their own path and not being so worried about what everybody else thinks, I find it the less that you actually fall into that, because you don't really have as much time anymore because you're focused on you and your goals and where you're going and the service that you're meant to have in the world. And so I think it's really about keeping the focus more on yourself, not in a selfish way, but really in a more impactful, how am I really staying in my lane and getting stronger in my own craft and really working on the things that I can change and control versus trying to appear to be a part of a cool kids club or trying to be accepted by somebody. And before I know it, I'm, down this, I don't know, maybe some multi-level marketing rabbit hole that I didn't even realize that I signed up for. And so again, the awareness with that, I think, is huge.
Yeah, so good. And I think too, that you have to kind of realize, if anyone listening and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm realizing that this is me, like no shame, no judgment, like everyone has been there at some point. And I think it's realizing it and getting out of it and understanding that getting what you want, having your own path is going to look so different than somebody else's. Like, just as an example, again, almost 25 years before I came on and posted my first post ever. And here everyone was like, oh my gosh, you need to do this and you need to do this. And you right, there's all these things that need to happen because of somebody else's path to success. And meanwhile, I'm sitting here and I'm like, you know what? I've never had cheerleaders. Like I never had I did all of this on my own, and maybe it was harder that way. But I also know that there's multiple different ways that you can build a company and that you can be successful. Can you maybe speak a little bit about that and some of your experience that you've seen working with people and how different success can look?
Yeah. To me, that is the biggest red flag. If someone is telling you that their way is the only way, like run as fast as you can away from that, because they're just trying to sell you something. I believe in the power of really alignment and the power of finding your people, because there could be somebody that has, a curriculum or a documentation or a modality or methodology or some kind of effectiveness that it's like, hey, you buy their recipe, you add your own flavor and spin to it, and you can go and bake your really amazing, magical, cake, or maybe yours are cupcakes, or maybe yours are cookies, who knows? But, you can go and make it your own thing. And so I think that there's something about, for sure, investing in and aligning with a process or a method or a thought, even just a thought process, if you will, if you're aligning with somebody, and maybe finding a coach or a collaborator or a community in that. But I also know, just from my own experience, as you do, Candy, is that you're going to learn best through your own trial and error. At least I have. And from my own redirections, my own failures, my own okay, that fell flat versus, oh, this is flowing and this feels really good. And this feels like it's gaining some momentum here. And you can't learn that from anyone. I don't think it can be taught. I think it's taught through your own life experience and your own process. And so I think that it goes back to, again, trusting yourself, having the confidence to trust yourself where you're at right now, not comparing your step 1 to somebody else's step 10, and not trying to fast track it or to, maybe align with someone who may not be the best fit for you because you're trying to fit yourself in some kind of box. And I think that, through especially my first few years of kind of growing up in the online space, that was the biggest kind of lesson that I took away from that.
Yeah, because you learn from mentors or your mistakes. And even though people think that they can avoid the mistakes by working with a mentor, unfortunately, no, you're just going to minimize them. It's, like someone giving the best quarterback with the most potential, the playbook, they still have to run the plays. It still depends on what your offensive line is. It still depends on what the defense is that you're playing against. There's so many other variables. And for me, myself, like what has helped me when I was much, much younger in my journey was being around other people doing it so that you're at least in an environment of other people that are successful and want to, not just go out and binge drink and, party on the weekends, but also want a certain thing in life. Yeah. It's such an evolution and it's constant of the things you need to learn and the mistakes that you need to make. And then I feel like no matter what mountain you climb, there is another mountain if you're going to continue to grow. So
always.
It's like, always, right? It's like another level, another devil. I think someone has the quote. And I think too, playing small, like I've seen people, and I know you talk a lot about confidence, and I'd love to know your thoughts on people that are maybe they got to a certain level and they got comfortable. Personally speaking, I felt it was a lot easier to become successful when you had a lot of leverage, a lot of weight to become successful because you came from, I came from poverty and abusive family, all of that. So it was easier that you had leverage to get there. When you get a level of success and have comfort, it's a little harder because life's pretty good to get up and continue to push, right? So then what happens is you tend to play a little smaller. Is there maybe something, maybe twofold, what someone could do to evaluate if they're playing small? And if they are, a few things that maybe they can start to do in order to get that excitement and that leverage again?
Yeah. I mean, I think that what you said is a great point, is that when you're coming from a place that there really is no other choice, but like the way out, then you don't have any other choice. And that's kind of the beauty of it. The downside to choice is like, great, you've got now these different choices of what you can pick, but you have to be very aware and mindful of that complacency piece, or even I think just the ignorance. And I'll think back, a great example is, for those of us who were like running Facebook ads in 2016, back when we could give Facebook $1 and they would give us $5 back, it's like, if I could only go back in time, how much money would I have given Facebook? All of it. I would have given Facebook all of the money. And hindsight's 2020. So you don't really realize kind of like what you're working with. But I think that you think back then, it's always going to be this way. And then as life happens, things have to grow and evolve, and you have to learn. Do I get complacent? Do I get resentful? Do I get stagnant? Or do I have a deeper why and a deeper drive to keep that momentum going? And so for me, when it comes to that idea of really checking in, like, am I playing small? You kind of have to ask yourself, I think is, are there excuses that I'm making a lot, like right now? Are there things that I'm avoiding? I think that that's a big one. Am I clear on what my next level of expansion and growth is? Do I still have excitement in what I do? Because here's the thing, our passions are going to come and go. And there's going to always be things that we have to work on that are not fun and not exciting that you have to do in order to drive your business, drive your initiatives, whatever that may be for you. But is there still that deeper core enthusiasm of why you want to pick up the phone to do your work today, why you want to open that computer, why you want to press, live on the podcast? Do you still have that deeper momentum and that deeper drive? And I think it's about checking back in with that to see, am I really showing up in the way in which reflects that deeper meaning and that deeper why? Because I think that when it comes to taking a risk, or when it comes to going to a next level of growth and expansion, I believe that everything that I want to be or want to do or want to have is worth the risk, the pain, the challenge, all of those things. If not, then what are we doing it for? And so that's really what I look at. And I always want to carry in my thoughts and in my actions the person that I'm always evolving to be. And so that's how I kind of know if I'm not doing that, those are the indicators that I'm playing small. when I'm making excuses, when I'm falling kind of into that victim mentality, when I start to get resentful, when I start to get ungrateful for what I have. And you want to know the fastest way to lose your bottom is you start to be ungrateful for what it is that you have. The universe will take that so fast, you won't even know what's happened. So that's what I look at when I may be feeling those indications of playing small.
Yeah. What are some of the things that someone may be listening and is like, oh my gosh, I am getting tripped up in that. Like, I'm not being grateful, because it is hard. It's easy to be grateful when everything's going great. Mm-hmm. It's really tough when you're not getting what you want and you feel like you've been stuck in something, trying so hard to break through or just figure this next thing out. And it's like, I feel people sometimes are battling between, should I quit or do I need to keep going? Right?
Yeah.
Have I exhausted all the options, or are I 3 feet to gold? And I think discernment is the only thing that's really going to help somebody. And I feel it's, at least me personally, it's through time that you kind of have to sense going after enough to know when you're quitting, or when you're quitting too soon, or when you've exhausted it and this door just isn't for you. I don't know if you have a little hack for that, but I have felt, unfortunately, that there's no like step by step to know. I've just kind of had to almost instinctively know, like, have I actually tried everything? You know, is this giving me any enjoyment? If I were to win or get or earn whatever I'm looking to do, would it be worth doing this for another 3 months or 3 years? But I'd love to know, like, if there's anything in those moments that you kind of help people work through, or in your own mind, of when to know this just door isn't for me, or I just need to keep on going forward.
Yeah. Well, the first thing that I will do, because I believe that when we're getting to our place of asking ourselves that question of like, do I need to move forward or throw in the towel? We have to come from a place of not feeling like crap about ourselves, because if we're coming from that place, then it's like, that's not really going to help. So what I like to do this, I do this at least every year. I may do it more than 1 year if I need it, but I will sit down and I will make a list of everything that I have gotten, achieved, accomplished that I never thought was possible. So whether that's in my personal life, in my professional life, it could be materialistic, it could have a deeper meaning to it, but I will list off everything that I have just received or created in my own life that I would have thought at one point was not possible. And that allows me to really see like, oh, wow, how far I've come, how much I've been able to accomplish and achieve. And I don't say that again, like in a materialistic or success-based way, but like in my life, like look at what I have been able to create from my own mind and my own ambition and my own desires. And that lights a fire. That always lights a fire in me. And it brings me back to that place of gratitude. And then when it comes to, okay, should I keep moving forward or not? The easiest thing that's helped me is that if I really stay centered and if I really get quiet and I'm thinking about, maybe it's an offer, or, you know, maybe it's a team member that I've been working with for a while, or whatever it may be, I'll say, okay, does this experience, does this opportunity, does it light me up? Does it make me feel expansive? Does it make me feel excited? Even if it's hard, is there still something about it that's like, oh, it's like a game. Like there's still more to unpack. There's still more to the onion that I have to peel back. Or does it make me feel restrictive? Does it make me feel clunky? Does it make me feel caught and heavy and resistance? And that is always a big indicator to me of like, something can be hard, but if I still have that deeper excitement and enthusiasm for it, there's still juice in the tank for me to see, okay, do I need to keep moving forward? Because I could be on the precipice of something great versus like, am I forcing something that maybe isn't here? The other thing that I'll look at, and this is, you know, sometimes people don't, is just the data. Like, is the math mathing? Like, what did the analytics and what did the stats say? And like, what does it really look like when I look at the brass tacks of something? You know, there was a time several years ago, we had a lot of different multiple revenue streams happening in the business. And I basically just listed out what were the revenue streams based on highest, you know, net profit all the way to the lowest. And then on the other side, I listed basically our time input. How much time was it taking myself and or my team members to execute on these things? And it was astounding to see like something that was like number 6 on the net profit list was like number 2 in output. And it's like, why are we spending so much time executing this thing that's number 6 when number 1, 2, and 3 isn't taking a lot of time? And if we just triple down on those 3 things, like we could probably make a lot more money and be a lot more efficient. And so I think that it's just really looking at the data, just simple things like that can really help as well.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So I'm a huge data girl. Anyone that listens to the podcast knows this. And I think it's always there. It's always in the numbers. It's always in the data. If we are just able to remove our emotion from it and listen to what it's saying, right? Like I even say this with clients, like people that are service-based and work with clients. Take a look at all of your clients and see what your profitability is on each. And what is the intake time? What is your team time? How much does it take to onboard? Do they have typical more questions than some of your other clients?
Right. What's the energy suck?
Yeah, right. The ones that drain the life out of you. Like, and be willing to be able to say no to some of those clients, to be able to allow them to go, and some other business will be blessed to have them because of where maybe they are in their journey, but really ranking it. And what is the lowest 20% of all of your, whether it's products or streams or revenues or clients, and what could you do to eliminate them? And imagine just focusing on the top 20%. And if you put 80%, Pareto's principle, if you put 80% of your efforts on that top 20%, what would your ROI be there? Right. And I think for at least me personally, I don't have a problem with it. When I view that, I'm just like red X. I'm just like done. Yep. And so I've closed so many things, either even if it is something that's profitable, it still took too much to set up, to continue it, or to grow it to the level that I wanted. Like I remember thinking this one, I was like, okay, so I can develop a sales team. I can have sales leads. I can have setters. And I was like, I do not want to do, like, I would rather have 4 other companies than develop Now, some people would be like, well, that's what you got to do, but you can make money doing anything. So why not make it in a way that at least aligns with, like, the thought of having 14 salespeople, setters and closers was just like exhausting in my brain. And I'm like, if that's what it takes, I don't want to do it. So I think it's being okay to say that, it's being
1,000,000%. And just taking the time to really look at that. And if you're someone who maybe you don't think you're a numbers person, maybe you have a hard time looking at the data, just get somebody to help you. There's no shame in that. But the amount of change, quick change that it could create in your business and in your bottom line is huge and beyond worth it.
Yeah. And it's like the one thing, investing somebody that knows numbers and can understand business data doesn't cost you money. It actually helps you make and keep more of what you already have. So I'm 100% agree. And we can't wrap up this podcast because I know that prior to you, 2016, you kind of coming into the online space, you were in PR, right? Yeah. You were in a whole other world. And I think there's so much value to at least touch on it because that kind of is what you started with, right? Pitch Perfect and how to like get brand deals and how to communicate your offers to people. Is there maybe just take a little snapshot of your genius and share with people that maybe they are in a business that they love. They understand their market. They know what their offers are. They have decent profitabilities, but they just want more eyeballs on their business. Is there maybe some tips that you can give them to get some quick wins?
Yeah. So, visibility is a huge component to driving a personal brand, to driving a business, to really driving a lot. And it's really what helped me be able to go from being a publicist in corporate and agency America to having an online business and a personal brand myself. And I basically took the strategies that I learned as a publicist, and instead of pitching clients, I started to pitch myself, and it worked. And I was like, okay, well, if it works for my corporate clients and it works for me, it's probably going to be able to work for other people online. And so I started working very early on with, we would call them now influencers or content creators. Back then, we called them bloggers and YouTubers, among other things. But essentially, influencers that wanted to learn how to monetize their personal brand, and more specifically, how to monetize the content that they were spending so much time creating online. And so the way in which I taught other content creators how to do this were primarily through brand deals with companies and partnerships and sponsorships. But then, of course, there were some media components to that and all of that. So that really would be my biggest tip, is that if there's someone listening right now and they're like, okay, I've got a great personal brand, but I don't consider myself a quote unquote influencer. However, I would love the opportunity to start building relationships with brands and working with brands. Then I would say, really get clear on that. Maybe it's not not going to look like a quote unquote traditional brand deal on Instagram, but maybe a company could sponsor your live event. Maybe you could keynote one of their upcoming conferences. I mean, there's so many different ways to work with companies and brands nowadays. And so I always just recommend someone, whether you consider yourself a content creator or an influencer or an entrepreneur or a coach, whatever label you put on yourself, just start getting a list of your dream brands that you would want to work with and at what capacity you would want to work with them. And then from there, you could create a pitch. You could work with me if you wanted to fast track that, or if you're someone that feels savvy enough that you can do that, that's when you would essentially start to create a pitch, pull it together on what you want to do and why it matters. An elevator pitch of sorts. The ones that I love to share with people is because it makes it simple. It's a formula. It's who you are, what you offer, who you serve, and why it's important. And you just hone in on those 4 key components for your pitch excellence. And then you can start sending pitches out to brands and start building relationships that way. So that's one big way to do it. Another thing that you could do to kind of build that visibility momentum is something that I also did when I first started out. And that was called joint ventures, JV partnerships and opportunities. So you could align, let's say Candy and I wanted to get together and we're going to do a joint venture partnership. I could come into her community and I would essentially do a training for them or tell them about my amazing product and service. Then we would sell that to her incredible community. And then Candy and I would take, a 50 commission split on that. And not only is that great to, of course, make money and share your gifts, but it's allowing you to go into someone else's community and share your insights, your gifts, and your offers with them. And so any kind of joint ventures that you can do with other people, with other companies, offering your products and services, again, from a service-based place, not from a slimy, salesy place, is always going to be a really good win to not only build some income, but just really, again, build that visibility. How can you get in front of other people's platforms? And those are 2 easy ways to do it.
Oh my gosh, those are so good. And I think that another thing to tack on to that, the JVs, I don't know your thoughts on this, but I feel like this is going to continue to shift this way for even podcasts. Mm-hmm. It's like there are so many people that want on your podcast because especially nobody wants on it when in the beginning, but once it grows and has a lot of downloads and it's getting a lot of momentum, people want on it. And there isn't exactly an exchange there, right? It's not that you're trying to go after transactional relationships, but there does have to be some sort of an energy exchange there. Absolutely. And so I feel that I am more interested, and at least we've been toying with this idea is like, well, do you want to do a commercial on the podcast? Do you have something that you're selling that you'll do a percentage back? And it's not so much that it's that transaction, but it's kind of like, this is going to really expose your business to this audience. And there really isn't anything to exchange because unless the other person also has programs and the other person, right, there isn't an exchange. So I feel that that's going to shift. And I tell a lot of people too, like if you want on these podcasts, what can you offer them? Exactly. And rather than just saying, hey, I want to be on your podcast, be like, hey, I want to be on your podcast. Here's a little bit of what the value I can bring. And also I'd love to give you 50% of everything of this particular course that we promote. Now people are going to start to pay attention.
1,000,000%. And I think that, again, that it goes back to that networking piece that we were talking about earlier. It's not about networking for need. It's about networking to really build relationships and cultivate those relationships with other communities. And that is going to be the return on time, money, energy, investment of that is always going to be greater than paid ads. Are you just struggling to organically get your stuff out? I mean, that is the fastest and easiest way to grow, is to find those dream partners, those dream brands that you want to align with, and just allow yourself to think bigger. We don't have to just keep doing what everybody else has done. Like, we're all creative people here. You probably have a ton of ideas, just like the great one that Candy just shared. Think bigger. Like, what else could you do? It could be a podcast swap, but maybe there's something else that we could make happen here. And so I think that just encouraging everybody to take that next step and think a little bit bigger will be helpful with that.
Yeah. Think bigger and think, what can you offer back, right? Especially when you're making an ask. But you were saying the fastest way is to get exposure with other people. The fastest way to lose your ass is paid ads. Oh my gosh. Like, talk about like being able to just having to, like, there's been twice now in the middle of a campaign that I'm just like, you know what? We're stopping everything. Like, I understand we're still in contract. I will pay you, but I'm not going to continue to pay, because I feel like there's such a learning curve and there's so much testing, even with the best companies. that's running paid traffic that they almost don't know either. And there's still so much learning and expense that I just want to encourage anybody that if you're in the midst of something, be willing to stand up. If you feel like Julie was talking, that something is heavy, something's incongruent, something doesn't feel right, speak up. Like I have now twice just been like, I'm not bleeding more money. I'll pay you the contract, but we're not going to keep spending ads because something is broken and I don't have time to recreate a funnel. So until we can get someone to fix the funnel, we're just going to stop driving eyeballs on something that's broken. And I think with PR, that's another thing people trip up. They want PR because it's flashy and it's shiny and, oh my gosh, I was on this and this. But if you're bringing eyeballs to your business and you don't have a way to convert them, or you don't have a functioning funnel or an offer or anything that you're promoting, you wasted that opportunity.
Yeah, 1,000,000%. And that's, you just brought up too, I mean, Facebook ads, it is a long game. And you have to understand that if you're someone who wants to invest. And I mean, I run ads. I'm a big proponent of ads, but I've been running ads since 2016. And there's been years and years of trial and error and building out funnels. And it's not a get rich quick kind of thing. And I think a lot of times it's sold like that. Yes. And I think maybe again, 4 or 5 years ago, when just the ROAS was different with Facebook ads, you could sell it more in that way. But you have to get really clear with ads and with PR, like what is your long game strategy here? Because it's not just about making a buck. There's a lot of lead gen opportunities that can happen there. There's a lot of, repurposing opportunities that can happen with PR and the stuff that you get, but you have to have that strategy in place to really see that return on investment. So that's two components there.
And again, I don't want it to be misconstrued that I'm talking down about ads, but I think it's what you said. People package it as, oh, this is a great way that you can start doing 6 figures a month. No. Unless you've already had proven track record, you know what your audience, who they are, what they want, you kind of have an idea of your numbers. Sure, you can take more eyeballs and put on something that's working. But if you have to test all of that, you're going to be at least running ads for probably north of a year before you start to really understand the algorithm. And that's just as the algorithm is now. If at month 9, you have a big shift, now you're starting all over to kind of figure out all of these iOS issues. So I just love to have honest conversations because I think people glamorize all of these things as opposed to saying like, this can cost you a lot of money and time.
Yeah. And the amount of money that you have to spend on it, like you can have a 6-figure month, but you're going to be spending at least 3.5 times as that to get that return at least. So just again, perspective.
Yes. I love that. I love this honesty. It's like so nice to just be able to talk about this openly and honestly. And I want to be able to have people know where they can find you, where they can get the book, all of the things, because you have so many great offers of what you share with people. And I love how you do it in this very like non-salesy way. So can you tell everyone where they can find you?
Yes. So you can find me at juliesolomon.net is my website to dive into all things there. I spend the most time personally on Instagram. That's what I have capacity for. So you can find me at Jules, Juls, Solomon, Solomon on Instagram. That is where I'm most active. My book, Get What You Want, How to Go From Unseen to Unstoppable, you can get wherever books are sold. There's also an Audible that I narrate, which was super fun. It's a very quick listen. If you like to listen to books, you can get it there. And then, of course, the Influencer Podcast, wherever you love to listen to podcasts. We're also launching on YouTube on July 1st, which I'm really excited about. So you can watch the Influencer Podcast on YouTube or listen to it wherever you love to listen to podcasts. And then when it comes to support, all things visibility, marketing, and pitching is my lane. I do a really amazing quarterly program called the Visibility Experience, where it's curriculum-based, but then you also get a lot of really high-level, high-value group coaching from me to walk you through my visibility method and a lot of key components there. So if you're someone who's wanting to gain more visibility and traction on social media, that could be something that you could check out when we launch it quarterly. So that's it.
Love that. And then we also have just one final question, and we'll link all of that up to the show notes so everyone knows where to find you. We also have one final question that we always ask guests, because the name of this podcast is Generation Wealth. And I'd love to know what the definition of wealth means to you at this point in your life.
Wealth means to me at this point in my life, freedom, big time, and enjoying the fruits of my labor. So I was raised, I was raised in a house where there was no money. So it's like there wasn't a savings because we didn't have any money to save. But also from a bigger generation where you're supposed to save all your money and, or you're supposed to do this with it or that with it. And yes, I believe there's a lot of truth to that. But I also believe that money is meant to be used. And I read a book recently, Candy. I think you'd be fascinated by it. A hedge fund guy wrote it, but it was called Die with Zero. And his whole thought perspective was, how do you use your money, even if you're giving it away to your children, and even if you're giving away to philanthropy, how do you use your money while you're alive and while the people that you love and that you want to impact are alive to make the biggest impact possible? And it's really given me a different perspective on wealth as you're living. I think that we think about generational wealth and wealth as like this thing that I'm going to build. And then one day when I'm dead, my legacy will get it. And he kind of flips that whole thing around and gives a lot of really good strategies on how to do that and to essentially die with zero, which is just a funny title for a book. So
yeah, it's a great title.
Yeah, so that's really what wealth means to me in my life right now. Freedom and flexibility to work the way that I want, to be with my family the way that I want, and to really use, the money that we've made, my husband and I, to experience life. And that's been really fun.
I love that. I'm with you on that definition of wealth, 100%. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing all of your genius. I appreciate having you on so much.
Thank you for having me.